Over your 76 years on planet Earth, how have you seen, with the advent of technology and the development of global corporate competition, how have you seen the human skills of cognition and communication degrade?
I don't know about degrade. I mean, that might not be the applicable word. I was born in 1947, and there were probably 2.3 or 4 billion people in the world at that time. Uh, the rest of the world was, most of it was bombed back into the Stone Age. So the only industrial plant around was the United States. And we had it, my generation has had it so good. I don't think we realize how good we've had it. We have been the richest, the most fortunate generation in human history. We have had it so easy. You know, it's interesting to me that so many people I know of in my generation are so terribly unhappy because, man, they've had it good. They really have. And that 75 years has been, I also think, we've lived through something like the Pax Americana. We've not had any world wars. We've constantly had war, but it's not been a war mostly that affected a lot of us, at least not since Vietnam. And we we've lived through, nevertheless, one of the most consequential eras in world history, I think. And if you wonder about that, you just look at the industrial uh, plant that we became. I mean, for a long time we were the industrial giant in the world. About 1980, 81 or so, we started shifting to a financial services economy where the bankers were running things, and it changed a lot for common people. It changed a lot of things that most of them seem not to notice. We've witnessed in the last 50 years, 45 years or so, during the course of my career, one of the great transfers of wealth in human history. There were no billionaires in America in 1950. Now there are about 1,000 of them, and just a handful of them have more wealth than anyone than the rest of the world. That's pretty remarkable. We don't, that somehow seems to be kind of invisible to us. We don't appreciate the power that creates, and what that means and how that is accomplished. But the world has changed so much in the course of that time, and we are as far as our economic state is concerned, we more resemble the Gilded Age than we do the age that I was born into, I think. But then you think about how our technologies have changed. It's been so dramatic, and as our technologies changed, so has our cognition changed. People, I've often heard it said, and I don't know who said it originally, but that the past is a foreign country, and I think it is. We don't. Our grandparents now would not recognize us. They would not comprehend us, and we wouldn't comprehend them. We think differently. I don't know. And we're getting into a big philosophical discussion here that I don't necessarily want to get into, but I think your question was about business, basically about corporations, and I don't. I think you need a new theory of money, and value to talk about that I'm not prepared to talk about. So I don't know. I don't know what American corporation is now. I don't know what people do for a living anymore. I don't know whether they know what they do for a living anymore. You know what I'm talking about?
It's interesting that you mentioned our grandparents not recognizing what we've become. When you said that, my grandmother, only grandparent I really knew ever growing up, she passed when I was in second grade. So second grade would have been 6 years old. So 1992.
Uh-huh.
There were no cell phones, or the ones that were bricks that my mother wore on her hip for work, and there was a beeper.
Right.
But it's interesting that you put that um, in that light. In 1992, no, my grandmother would not know where she was if she were to walk in today.
I can hang around if my granddaughters are here, and I love them to death, but they're always got that cell phone. My daughter's the same way, and I've gotten pretty bad about it myself, wanting to dial in to this. That's a different way of thinking than you know it is with all these books I've got around me here. That's different. That's a different way of thinking, and I'm not. This is too big a subject to tackle here this late. You know, in this we can talk about that sometime. But because I'm very interested in it, what has interested me most, I guess, in my life beyond my profession has been, I guess, intellectual, cultural, social history. You know, how do we think what we think? How do we, know who we are? Who are we? What is human consciousness? And all of these things is, and the consequent theologies that would go along with that. Those things fascinate me, but there's such huge subjects they kind of that require a sophisticated value of vocabulary of sophistication that most people don't carry around with them. And so I'm reluctant to even get started in talking about that. But we're not the same people that we were when your mother passed. My grandfather certainly would not. Bless his heart, this is not his world. He wouldn't recognize it is just not his world, and he would not want to be here. I was close to my grandfather, and he probably as much as anybody raised me. Certainly taught me how to work against my will, but he taught me nevertheless, and it did me was very helpful to me later on in life. But man, I remember my sister had one of these plastic hula hoops, and it was in the yard, and we were out there cleaning up the yard. And that thing was, I don't know, he must have stepped on to something. He looked down at it, and I will never forget. the look of disgust on his face. And here he was, we had spent money on this piece of plastic, and he called it, he just said, get this lollyhoop out of here. And I can remember thinking to myself, Papa, it's not your world anymore.
Well, interestingly enough, regarding a couple of your comments, of course, you said these are always in our faces. Interestingly, had it not been for Facebook Messenger, you and I would not have begun communicating. So,
Well, thanks for Facebook Messenger. I have to say that in my dotage, in my retirement, that Facebook and all of this has been enormously entertaining to me. I've enjoyed doing it. I have caught up to old friends I hadn't talked to in years, and I've got access. And isn't Google wonderful? That you can, any question that you have about anything, it's so that you can get some kind of answer there. I'm sorry, this is a brave new world, you know, amazing that it has such creatures in it.
well, if I may, do you have any thoughts on Mr. Elon Musk and all of his efforts?
I haven't a clue. I wish he'd go to Mars and stay there, but otherwise, no.
Roger that. Thanks again, Cap. We'll be in touch.
Thank you. I enjoyed it.
This has been a production of Where You At Studios, LLC.